Hey guys, welcome cash flowers to our channel, VIP Financial Ed. My name is Matthew Pillmore. I'm the president of VIP Financial Education, and as you know, we help you go further, faster financially. We do it through online trainings just like this one. We also teach all over the country. Most weeks I'm on the road teaching audience members various ways of managing their money and their cash flow, how to work with the banks, and basically how to turn debt into wealth, how to leverage the right way. Michele is a really close friend of mine. This is my very special guest today, and she has been instrumental and has played a key part in truly transforming the person that I am becoming over the last year. And I insisted, you've got to come in here and start teaching this audience. We're going to have her in periodically. She's got invaluable information and knowledge to share with you, and she's agreed to do so generously. We're going to put some information in the description below, but today's training is the secret sauce to everything that we do on this channel, guys. You're not going to want to miss this, so stick around. All right, welcome back. Very, very excited about today's topic. Michele and I have been spending a lot of time together the last few days. Very, very close friend of mine. Her and her partner are just killing it. They're both entrepreneurs, and I have so much to learn from them every time we speak. And this topic in particular stood out to me because without an understanding of it, and without being able to actually allow the rubber to meet the road, the math just isn't going to matter. So we have this conversation in literally every session that we provide. Whether you are seeing this for the first time and you have not gotten your implementation session, it's an exclusive call that we provide. It's complimentary. Or whether you've already done that, you'll learn very early that in the very beginning of a conversation, we say, listen, the math will become a financial GPS for you. It will truly help you make the right decisions. The problem is the uncertainty, is the fear, is the personality contribution to this, which unlike math is so enormously imperfect, right? The math is the precision part of this, but the imperfect part is when we become our own worst enemies and become the roadblocks standing in our own way. And I want to have Michele kind of share her story, because not only is she a former NFL cheerleader, she overcame tremendous adversity in order to achieve that accomplishment. And it really, if we can't learn from someone like her, then frankly, I don't know where we're going to get the right information from. So guys, I'm so humbled to have Michele with me today. You're going to learn a lot. We're going to be talking about the 4 easy steps that we can take in order to overcome challenges and uncertainty, which has really been the biggest showstopper for people using the techniques that we teach. So without further ado, Michele, why don't you just kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Great. Well, thank you, Matthew. And first of all, I want to commend you and VIP for actually delivering this kind of content to your listeners, users, clients, anyone who's stumbling upon this channel. I think it's an amazing value add. It can be challenging when we're wanting to go create our next level, and specifically finances, to have the valuable resources that you're providing for free. As an executive life coach, people come to me and hire me for a lot of money, and now you're giving this content to really help support the audience members, and I really commend you on that. That's excellent.
Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it.
So, as Matthew said, I'm a former NFL cheerleader, executive life coach, and keynote speaker. But my story is one that will kind of set you up to see how emotional adversity really blocked and plagued my life. I was a tomboy, right? Well, I got made fun of a lot for my physical appearance. I looked very different when I was younger, and I was awkward. Well, that external bullying turned into internal bullying. I became my own worst critic, meaning I had the voices in my head that were telling me, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not this enough. Really, I just wanted to be like one of the girls. I wanted to look feminine. I wanted to be a cheerleader or a dancer. That was my desire. But I didn't believe in myself. I would go home and look in the mirror and pick myself apart, just because I was listening to all these chatterbox, I call it the ego voice, but just the thoughts in my head were very derogatory and debilitating. And frankly, it limited me from achieving my dream in middle school, high school, college. I mean, I never had the courage or the confidence to go out and audition for any of the cheer or dance teams, right? Well, what happened was that internal angst and bullying, all that fear of not being good enough, started to manifest itself in high achievement. I excelled in sports and academia. I just was doing it though from a place of I needed to be good enough. So just that fear of not being good enough I was now projecting into needing to achieve at like high levels. But the problem was I wasn't experiencing any joy in the process. In fact, this incessant desire to achieve then manifested itself further into health issues. I started getting severe anxiety, depression, panic attacks. My physical body was in a lot of pain, and frankly that went on for about 10 years. So I didn't feel good in my body for 10 years, all stemming from just not feeling good enough, hating myself. So when you touched upon the self-love journey, like that's a big part of it. But here now, years had gone by. I never achieved the goal that I wanted to about being a dancer, and it wasn't until I was just literally sick, like sick and tired of being sick and tired, where I finally decided I have to do something different. I've got to like change my mindset. I'm trying to achieve all these things. The pressure, the stress, the anxiety, the emotional charge around all this was debilitating, literally. I was afraid of living and I was afraid of dying. I mean, it was that challenging for me. So by sheer fate and circumstance, a friend of mine at my job when I was in my mid-20s had encouraged me to go out for the NFL to try to audition.
Oh, that's remarkable.
It is, considering I had no dance or cheer experience.
I mean, I
looked at her
like this. This is insane.
I looked at her like she had three heads, and you know, if you've seen my before and after pictures, we'll get you those so you can show the audience. You would see like I didn't look like a cheerleader. I didn't act like one. I didn't even have the thought process of what does a professional dancer and cheerleader even look like, act like. I mean, I hadn't performed before, so I looked at her like she had three heads. But I will say one of the biggest lessons I learned in that moment was when someone believes in you and they give you the resources to think in possibility, oh my God, it sparks an amazing like awakening within. And so I still didn't believe it, and I said, all right, well, I'll let you know when I am ready to try out. But at that time.
So did you set a goal? I mean, was this something that you said, okay, this is somebody telling me I can become an NFL cheerleader?
Yeah.
A tremendously absurd proposition to somebody that's never danced or cheered before. And then you said, what? I'm going to try and do this over X period of time. What was it that you tried to embark on?
Well, first, it took me 3 years to even build the confidence up to even get to setting that goal. But when I did, 3 years later, I said to my friend Jennifer, who had believed in me, I said, all right, I'm going to set this goal. I'm going to become an NFL cheerleader. I have no idea where to start. Tell me where I need to go. Give me a blueprint. Give me some sort of plan. But what I did was I went home, I made a vision board, and I set a goal. I said, I'm going to do this within 3 years. So I was clear about what I wanted, and I was clear about like the feeling that I would feel. And, I had an action plan that I put in place. So it did take 3 years, and I finally made it. And, I got cut. I had rejection in that, but there was a big shift that happened 2 months before the final audition on the third year. I hired a life coach, and what that life coach did was actually help me see how there were thoughts and beliefs that were working in my mind that were working against me, that were actually limiting me from hitting that goal. So that's what actually inspired me to become an executive life coach. I changed my thinking. I auditioned that third year. I made it. It was the most exhilarating, amazing experience.
Unbelievable.
But I learned something really valuable in that process. It's not necessarily about the end goal. It's about who you become in the process. And that's what I love about what your organization does for people. You actually help people step into this new version of themselves and express that financially. But there were some key things that I learned. And I mean, does that make sense as far as like...
Without question. I mean, it's, transforming from who you are and maybe have been your entire life into a new version of yourself is obviously going to take a tremendous amount of courage. So I would say that the parallels between what she's gone through and what you will ultimately go through is this transformation process where you ultimately determine for yourself that you deserve what it is that you're going for. And yeah. I think that's unbelievable. I love it. So
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the steps that it took to actually get there, and how do you replicate this? How do you break it into a formula or a process that can be followed time and time again moving forward? Because we're all going to encounter challenges, and we're all going to be uncertain about things, and that fear of uncertainty, fear of the unfamiliar, fear of the unknown, it's such a shackle to where we are now. And if you want to stay where you are now, then none of this applies. If you want to grow, if you want to transform, if you want to actually realize the potential that you have, because you're just as capable as I am, you're just as capable as Michele is, then it's going to require some form of kind of a systemized process, right? It's an exercise for our mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just like you wouldn't just go run a marathon, you'd be building up muscles, you would be training, and you'd be growing and expanding. So what I learned through the process of getting to the NFL, and also when I hired the life coach, what I started learning was personal development, self-leadership. And I say self-leadership is synonymous to self-love. It's really about leading self. And so realizing that there are some forces and influences that are working in your life. And this was a huge revelation for me. This was a game changer. When I learned that my emotional state dictates my quality of life, that was huge, because for many, many years, I was feeling horrible. I was feeling bad. I was feeling depressed. I was feeling anxious. I didn't know how to manage that at all. I didn't, a lot of my challenge was repressed, suppressed, and unexpressed emotions that didn't have an outlet. I never learned how to healthfully express those to shift. So your emotional state dictates your quality of life. Well, you may say, okay, well, what dictates my emotional state? Well, what impacts your emotional state is your perspective, the lens in which you see your life. That's your habits, the perceptions, the way you see things, your judgments, your beliefs, the concepts you hold about yourself. That's your perspective on life. Well, what dictates your perspective at an even lower level is your belief systems, your paradigms, the concepts that were shaped very early on in life. That was a game changer for me, because what I realized is I picked up a lot of beliefs, some good beliefs, some beliefs that serve me, that help me get results, and then some beliefs that limit me, that those thoughts that go on in your mind that are telling you you're not good enough or this or that. I mean, we pick stuff up along the way from, either family or media or school or whatever. You learn things about yourself that are not necessarily true, but they become your truth if you allow those thoughts to continue. And here was the biggest kicker. When I was studying personal development, and I learned that 95% of the way you think, act, and behave and speak is on autopilot. That means we're not even aware of what we're saying, what we're doing most times. It's kind of like when you're tying your shoe. You know how to do that automatically. Your brain just does it automatically. Well, that's how we handle our finances. That's how we handle our health. That's how we handle our relationships. I mean, literally, becoming aware of that shifted my game. That's how I got to the pros. And that's what a lot of professionals know. I'm saying that just to kind of share this with you if you've never heard it before, because this is what's going to segue into the 4 steps of overcoming uncertainty and challenge. Okay. Here's the bottom line. There's always some sort of uncertainty or challenge that we may be facing. Because if you're going to go to the next level, if you're going to experience something you've never experienced, to your brain doesn't know what to do with it. So it actually feels bad to your brain. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be perceived as bad. So does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. I mean, and this is something that I've been working toward too, accepting the fact that if I'm not in a perpetual state of discomfort and uncertainty, I'm, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as somebody always wanting to grow into a bigger, better version of myself, I'm going to have a hard time with that. I have to understand that growth comes with growing pains, and and maybe those pains can be perceived as growing joys, and I think that's probably all state of mind too. So, okay, I think I'm following you.
Yeah. So what would you say some of the biggest challenges that, some of the audience members might face?
I think growth in general for our audience is the biggest challenge. It's a matter of being able to accept and become aware that there's an issue to begin with, that maybe the way we were taught to do things, the almost even unspoken definition of fiscal responsibility is just wrong. That the formula, the banking system as a whole, is designed for us as consumers to fail. We're taught to borrow in this country for everything. But yet we're never taught how to repay. We're not taught how to actually borrow for things that will create wealth for us over time. And I think that the biggest challenge for our folks is growing outside of what would be considered traditional financial management. So stepping into a new space and being able to say, hey, I'm going to go from just owning my own home with a mortgage to owning my own home without a mortgage, along with maybe 5 additional properties. If you've never invested in real estate before, the process of real estate investing can seem really scary. Yeah. So I think just stepping into new space within finances, because it typically is such a private subject for people throughout their entire lives. There's this common sense of being complacent and just being willing to accept that this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges.
Well, and that can kick up a lot of emotions, like with money, like shame or guilt or
No question.
embarrassment. I mean, I know for my own journey, that just the topic of money and finances, and it kicked up so much just challenge and emotion. I didn't know what to do with it. And in fact, I just shoved it down, which is not healthy. And that's kind of what's going to lead into our process. But just being able to find ways to navigate through you taking yourself to the next level, you're going to have to rewire some of your thought processes, because that's going to change your habits. That's going to change and evolve and shift you into that new version of you to be able to make the proper decisions and do things differently than what was like programmed into us, right? I mean,
so how do you form the new habits? Okay, let's say somebody is really uncomfortable about the idea of doing things differently.
Yeah.
And you go about maybe doing 1 or 2 things that you wouldn't have done before, and you overcome the fear. But the next time, the 3rd time, there's fear again, and the 4th time, and the 40th time, and the 400th time, there's fear and uncertainty. Tell us how we go about creating a cyclical process for ourselves mentally to get through that, not just the first or the 4th time, but also the 400th time, because that's just, it's tough. And people, I think over time, that discomfort is easier to avoid than to courageously get through. And precisely.
Totally.
So tell us a little bit about those 4 steps. How do we make this something that we can habitually begin doing?
Totally. Well, the nice thing to know is that even though you grew up with these belief systems and you have these paradigms, just because 95% of the way you think is on autopilot doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Just becoming aware of it and realizing really all a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. And that thought produces emotion. So if you keep thinking the same thought over and over again, or focusing on something that's scary or avoiding it or whatever, it's going to produce emotions in your body. And so actually this technique that I'm going to share actually came about in my kitchen when one of my best friends and I were discussing our journey through personal development and leadership. And we were very cerebral early on. We were very much through, okay, here's how we can rewire the way we think. We would tell ourselves new thought patterns. We changed our beliefs. Very systematic, and that was great. But after reading some literature within the past 2 years, a couple of books that really showed us how important your emotions are. And actually, when you do not express your emotion in a healthy way, you repress it, suppress it, it becomes unexpressed, and that creates challenge. It literally will stop you in your tracks. The reason being is because when you think a thought or have an emotion, it produces a chemical response, either positive chemicals that are the serotonin, all the feel-good chemicals or hormones, and if you have negative thoughts, that produces cortisol and just hormones that are literally going through your whole body. That affects your habits, it affects your thoughts, and it will stop you from taking action. And so when my girlfriend and I were chatting, we're like, we really need to incorporate emotions and allowing ourselves to feel them. So this 4-step process that we developed starts with the first step, which is reveal it. That's going to happen naturally, guys. Something's going to trigger you. You're going to take action on something, or you're going to, you try to get that loan. It doesn't go through. It creates an emotional, like maybe guilt or embarrassment or shame. You'll be triggered. The emotion's going to reveal itself. It's your job to feel it. And that's step 2. Feel it. Don't think the thoughts around it. Don't let all those old beliefs that are negative start talking. Just quiet your mind. Feel the emotion and the sensation of that emotion through you. Let it run its course. Don't lash out on anyone, or don't engage anyone else with this. This is just for you to allow yourself to feel the emotion and be in total acceptance of it. Don't judge yourself. Don't label it. Does that make sense?
What would you say is the most common reaction at this stage? There's a general sense of awareness about something that maybe somebody was in the dark about or unwilling to accept. and it starts to trigger these feelings. Would you say that most people this is the point of suppression? People just kind of bury this down, put their head in the sand. They say, I don't like that feeling.
Reactive mode.
And then go back to doing things the same way.
Yep, because your brain is wired to go back to avoid whatever was scary. And so what happens is a lot of people will fall off. They fear feeling the emotion. And this is where you'll have to have the courage and have to just be really gentle, loving, and accepting of yourself, of feeling the emotion. Let it come up. Let it run itself out. The example I use is, imagine if you have children and you give them a bunch of chocolate or candy or caffeine and they're all, excited and running around. It's like if you were to just strap them down and sit them down, they're going to have like all this energy that just needs to run its course. Well, it's the same thing with your emotions. When your emotion is triggered, it's already been triggered. Don't try to judge it or anything. Just let it run its course. Let it, course through your body in full acceptance. Breathe through it. Just deep breaths. And then that leads to the third step of heal it. So we got reveal it, feel it, and then heal it. And the healing part can be different for each person. Just the fact of feeling the emotion will be very healing. But if you need to maybe write out what's bothering you or journal about it, maybe you need to go for a walk or run or go do some sort of exercise.
Meditation has been
meditation
a big
is
one
huge.
This year for me.
If you are a meditator, I would say that's been huge for me too in my journey. Engage in meditation, quiet the mind. That's very healing. And then that leads to step 4, which is a critical step as well. It's what I call ideal it. So you got reveal it, feel it, heal it, ideal it. And ideal it means now that you've moved yourself through just this expression of the emotion, what is the ideal in this situation? What would it feel like if everything was lined up for you? If you had the perfect outcome, what would the ideal look like? What would it feel like? It's kind of the point of where you would create the vision of what you do want. So often we get stuck in talking about what we don't want. And where your focus goes, energy flows. Quite literally. And there's science behind this. Where you're putting your attention, that's going to keep showing up. You're going to keep seeing that same thing. So if you're constantly focused on what you don't want, you're going to start noticing more of what you don't want. So the ideal it portion is so important, where you just take the time to now get down on paper, in your mind, what you do want. Okay? So 4 steps, it's something that I use sometimes daily. It's not that we're ever going to be without problems or challenge. The way you look at your challenges can be opportunities. And I know for all of us, our group of friends and colleagues that we collaborate with, we're always taking ourselves to the next level. It's not that you got to create a life of bliss, and if it's not blissful, then oh my God, no. The joy is in navigating through the waters. It's just like
the journey.
It's the journey.
It's so great. And one thing that was really profound early on in our friendship, your partner Dave mentioned something to me about that idealism, being able to actually take, the outcome that you're working so hard toward and really spend time putting yourself in that space of already being there.
Yeah.
Who cares if you have a giant house and a nice car and a lot of extra money in the bank, or, these things, sure, there are benefits to some of that, but I also think that to be able to perceive yourself in that space even without it is possible. Yeah. And the more you do that, as you said, the energy starts to flow towards that. It becomes almost something that is inevitably yours versus this constant, achievement that is just barely out of reach.
Yeah, and that was my journey.
It was huge. That was so amazing to me, because if you can just picture yourself, no, I already am an NFL cheerleader. Yeah. Of course, that, I don't think I will ever be an NFL cheerleader.
You don't need to picture that.
But I think just being able to embrace that every day, and maybe that's part of the meditation, maybe that's part of just this therapeutic exercise that you go through, is being able to sit for several minutes a day and envision where you will end up. And I hear more and more and more highly successful people talking about this. So it's working for me already, guys, and I just can't express enough gratitude for you coming and being willing to share this information, because again, without this secret sauce, none of the math that I spend so much time focusing on can even happen. So Michele, we're going to throw, as I said, description stuff in the description about you where people can reach out, they can learn more from you, they can contact you and get more information from you directly. But guys, I just really want to say thanks so much for checking out this content today. So very important, and we're obviously humbled that you would even sit and spend this time with us. So continue to get information from our channel. If you haven't already, I encourage you to go ahead and consider subscribing. Make sure you select the bell in order to turn on your notifications. You'll get alerts every time we upload new content. We're doing that each and every week now, guys. We're going to bring Michele back. She's got an endless supply of terrific education that we need to start incorporating more of into this. So we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks so much for coming today, and have a great one. Thanks.